Hey Elaine,
Hello.
I feel I need to stage an intervention.
An intervention for yourself or for someone else?
I can't really stage an intervention for myself. I don't think that's quite how interventions work.
Okay. Who's it for then?
It's for you.
Oh no. What is it?
I think you've spoke more to me about Portrait Artist of the Year than I have ever spoken to you about wrestling. And that's just in the past week.
Yeah. There's a funny thing, isn't there? I am at a point in my life where I need to take extra care of my mental health. And when I do that, when that happens to me, I tend to go into pop culture as a means of helping myself. It is I was going to say a comfort blanket, but it's something I think that could be prescribed to me as a person. A GP said to me recently that they had prescribed a darts night to someone, which I think is brilliant because it's individualistic, isn't it?
Yes.
I think a GP could prescribe television to me, and without any sort of like, without any tweeness or without any sort of like, wink and a nudge, that would genuinely be something that would be useful for me. So when I feel that way, I do retreat into television, and I tend to stick to one thing. And it just so happens that the one thing that I've drawn on this time around is Portrait Artist of the Year. It's just beautiful. And it has a structure to it that I think is very soothing, particularly if you are going through a tough time. In that there are just these nice people. Most of them are like introverts. One of them has just said like art is for introverts who need to show off a little bit, like showing off for introverts, which I thought was a really interesting way of looking at. They're nice people from all around the country. They are split into there's nine. There's 9 of them.
Three, son.
Sorry,
threes.
yeah, I'm working it through. Maths is never my strong point. There's 9 of them, and they're split into 3 groups, and each group of 3 gets a celebrity to paint, and they're all in the same room together. They're just divided off, and they have 4 hours to paint the portrait of the celebrity, and then at the end they turn the easels round, and the celebrity gets to choose the one they want to take home with them, and then a selection of art historians and art experts also look at all the portraits, and then they pick 3 to go to a shortlist, and then 1 goes to the semi-final, and then obviously go to the final. And the be all and end all of it is whoever gets picked towards the end gets a commission to paint someone very famous. And this latest this latest season that's on at the moment, so it's live on at the moment, is you get £10,000 commission to paint Sir Lenny Henry. And then it goes up in the National Portrait Gallery. Now, only a few months ago, I was in the National Portrait Gallery looking around at things, and I'm now thinking, have I seen the portrait of Sir Lenny Henry? But I'm also going down to London in the future as well, and now I'm really excited about the fact that it might coincide with. And I always go to the Portrait Gallery. I go on a night time because it's free and you can walk around on a night, and it's very calming. And I like to see some of the really older portraits. Like there's a beautiful portrait of Mo Mowlam. They've got a Tracy Emin in there at the moment, her self-portrait. So it sort of speaks to me on a number of levels. But also, my other favourite thing to do is take photographs of the portraits and send them to you and play Guess Who It Is? Guess Who It Is? And I always start with the portrait that perhaps is the least like. Some people do have a bit of a mare on the day.
Yeah.
Or they're a bit abstract, and their likeness isn't really there. So it's quite funny to send it to you who knows absolutely nothing about which celebrity it is. And then you have to guess. And you've done really well, actually. You've been doing really well in you'll get it wrong with the first one, and then I'll send you the next one, and then it sort of all comes together. So it sort of works on lots of levels. It's really calming for me. It's given me something that I can watch like on a repeated level, which really, really helps me. But also I feel I can involve you, A, by talking to you about it quite a lot, clearly, and B, by playing Guess the Celebrity Portrait that this is.
See, the thing that I love about this is I know that in 3 weeks you will have completely forgotten about this TV show and moved on to something else.
Yeah.
But just for the last couple of days, you've been like, the only thing I can compare it to is, you know, the episode of Friends where there's a doctor who loves Fonzie. Mm-hmm. You're like just walking around the kitchen going, oh, they really didn't pick the right people. It's like the doctor when he's just walking around going, oh, Fonzie. And then with no context.
I do also have these little dreams of one day being in the show, and I think this is...
We have very different dreams. Let me just clear that.
But it does really is helping. I have every now and again I go in a little daydream of, oh well, if I let's say I got published and I wrote a book and I got published and I was invited on to sit, wouldn't it be lovely to have it? Like, I think it was a really beautiful thing to have a portrait of yourself, and obviously you get to pick the one that you like. But I think, and I know we've discussed this because obviously we've been discussing it a lot recently, but we've discussed this. You said you wouldn't have it on the wall.
Oh, I think it's weird to have a portrait of yourself up on the wall.
I think if it was done in this context, not like I'd gone out there and gone, someone please paint me, and it's like a local artist.
But we have pictures of Jaws and Back to the Future up on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be putting it in the living room. I wouldn't, like, be sticking it above the telly or anything.
Where would you put it?
Probably in the office.
Which office? Like, your office? With the Star Wars wallpaper?
No, I'm thinking about... I'm thinking about how... See, this is going into too much detail now. But I'm thinking about how all the changes that are going to happen to the house over the next few months. And I'm thinking about the office space that will become available. You know, like a bit more of a blank canvas.
Let me just make it clear. You know, we take the piss out of people's backgrounds when they're interviewed on, like, the news.
Yes.
Having a portrait of yourself in the background is worse than...
Yes.
But
it would have a lovely story to it. Like, oh, yeah, that was the time I went on television and... someone painted me and that was the one that I picked.
So when David James had pictures in the background that he'd clearly painted and...
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Are we talking about lockdown when everyone had to create a background when they were being interviewed on the telly? And
and David James was... I think it was during the Euros. David James was regularly interviewed on Sky Sports and had a different picture that he'd painted just propped up in the background every time.
There were other people as well. Wasn't there someone who
Change
had...
it back, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were going to change it back.
No. There was someone who had. Was it like? Were they newspaper front pages?
Yes. Yeah. It was someone sporting. I can't quite think who it was. It was someone like Matt Dawson or Phil Tufnell or someone like that who had like
the moon
landings and Nelson Mandela being released from prison.
And we played a game. You could see we were bored at the time. We played a game of like which front page would we have in the background, and I don't think we came out particularly well.
I don't think we could repeat the ones.
I don't think they could go in the back of it. But yeah, I've really enjoyed. I know
I'd have Guy Goma appearing on BBC, but I don't think that was quite front page. It was.
I would really recommend Portrait Artist of the Year. There are 10 series. I did not know this. I'm working my way back. So at the moment, I'm watching the 10th series, obviously, but I'm waiting for the next episode. I am at the semi-final of season 9. So I'm just working my way backwards. I think once I've got through all 10 series... then it will go away. You will. I'll move on to something else.
I might go away first.
You might go away.
I might be reading our Instagram, our Twitter, and our Tinder bios.
Just on a serious note, though, I do think, and we've said this before, and the whole premise of this podcast was we had a horrible thing happen to us.
Yeah.
When you are dealing with trauma, when you are dealing with mental health, television gets a really bad rap. It's seen as twee. It's seen as lighthearted. But television, film, and for me, music as well. I've been listening to a lot of new metal over the past few weeks, which I think, again, says something. It helps. It really, really helps.
I totally agree with you. Like, I went through a tough time about this time of year last year, and that was then that I got into watching wrestling again. Like, that was... Before then, I was like, I knew a lot about wrestling, but I didn't necessarily watch it week on week. That cost me a lot of fucking money, didn't it?
I mean, yes, well, if you do travel around the world watching wrestling, you did... I mean, I don't go to portrait gallery... I'm not going to the live recordings of these shows, although that would be nice.
Be a lot cheaper than LA, even if you did, I suspect.
Wrestling and then going to see the wrestling in LA. Anyway,
it's good that, though, isn't it?
Can we talk about some other television that isn't to do with portraiture?
television, watching television.
So I've got nothing because the only thing I'm watching at the minute is Colin from Accounts.
Oh, okay. And are you enjoying it? Is it?
Yeah, but it's like
people
6 months
said it was
old.
really good.
I love Colin from Accounts. It's
Right,
the
okay.
thing that I watch on the treadmill. No, seriously.
Oh, is that what you do?
Yeah, I put it on. 'Cause
Really?
It's a nice half hour.
Yeah,
Go for
it
a little
works
run
well.
on the treadmill.
Yeah. Oh,
And,
fab.
and I find myself laughing.
Is it
and-
fun? I was about to say, is it funny?
Yeah, it's laugh out loud funny.
Would I find it funny? And I know that's a difficult question.
Yeah, because it's quite inappropriate dark humour that
Mm-hmm.
not everyone would... I think everyone has that sort of humour that they find funny that they wouldn't necessarily repeat in front of their
Yeah,
friends or put on a podcast.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that.
Ours is kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, like, there are episodes where... Do you know what the premise of it is?
I have no idea. I didn't even realise it was Australian until you were watching it the other day, and I was like, what is this? And then it dawned on me what it was.
Okay, so it is two people who are just happened into each other. Someone's crossing the street. She walks out in front of a guy driving a car. As he beeps at her or something like that. As it turns around, she flashes a breast at him, As he's distracted, he runs over a dog.
This is awful.
Yeah.
I'm not liking any of this.
This is the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
The dog then goes to the vets, and the dog is told, okay, so it's going to cost $12,000 to
It's a lot of money.
put him right.
Veterinary.
He's like, don't really want to spend $12,000 on a dog that I don't own. She's like, you cannot have the other option. So
Okay.
I will pay you £12,000 to keep it. I don't have it right now.
Right.
So she can't keep pets in her house, so she moves in with him along with the dog that's called Colin from Accounts.
It's very contrived, isn't it? Yeah.
And then
Hilarity ensues.
Hilarity ensues. Do they fall in love with each other? Do they not? It's a real life couple
Okay.
who've written it and star in it, and it's really it's really funny. Like, but it's observational of just like shit moments in life, like having to sit there with your friend while a nan's about to die and stuff like that. It's that sort of
Right,
thing,
okay.
and how you act in those situations and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really good. But it's 6 months old, so I think most people will have seen it. But it's all on iPlayer if anyone wants to watch it. But yeah.
I have 3 documentaries, which I'm going to go through at speed.
Is one of them Portrait Artist of the Year? No. One of them you're very excited about.
Yeah, one of them you don't know that I've watched, and
Well, I do, because you text me saying, I've got a brilliant
yeah, but you don't know which one it is. You don't know the title of it or what it is. So I'm really super excited to talk to you about that, because I feel that I have already spoken to you about the 2 that I'm going to start with, and they're linked together. So I'm going to do them pretty swiftly.
Yes, before Portrait Artist of the Year came along, I was getting feedback on the mid-90s Man United squad and how funny they were.
I really like Gary Neville.
So
Like,
it's the David Beckham documentary. Should we just say that?
And I'm going to talk about 2 documentaries together. So I'm going to talk about Beckham, which is on Apple TV Plus. Is it Apple? I was thinking about this the other day. Is it Apple TV Plus? Is that what
No,
it's
it's
called?
Netflix for Beckham.
Oh, is it Netflix for
Yes.
Beckham?
It's pronounced Netflix.
Okay, brilliant. I do know the other one. And the next one is the Coleen Rooney, I think they called it something like the Wagatha Christie story. And that's on Disney Plus, which is interesting. It's interesting it's on Disney Plus. So I'm going to talk about the 2 of them, like I say, briefly and together, because I think they talked to, and they make me think about the same things. But the Beckham documentary, I think from a point of view of someone who knows a little bit about football but can't really remember which squads David Beckham was in, what happened. I mean, I remember the kicking of the foot up in the air and people getting very annoyed that he tripped someone else, but I couldn't tell you what year that was. I couldn't tell you
1998.
what, yeah, exactly. I couldn't tell you whether it was a World Cup or a Euros, or that sort of thing. So yeah, so I've got
Against Argentina.
I've got some reference, but I don't have, all the knowledge. And I think that is the perfect positioning for the Beckham documentary. It's had a huge amount of press interest, obviously because there are various things that have happened in David Beckham's life which the average person finds interesting. When you've got 2 highly famous people who are married, who have, you know, a number of children, where there have been rumours and allegations of extramarital affairs, you know, where there have been things about, you know, does he want a knighthood? The fact that he went to work for Qatar, and how that balances when he's talking about sexuality and human rights, you know. So all of these things is going on. They are interesting individuals, I think, just for the general person on the street. Then you put in the football, then you put in all, you know, the fame and the money. I think, though, it is perfectly positioned for someone who just knows that about them. And so when you're watching it, it plays out like a thriller. If you don't know the minute detail, you are on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen next, And they build it like a thriller, and they've got access to people like, you know, you've got all of the Man United squad. You've got Cantona, Neville, Paul Scholes, the manager. You've got Alex Ferguson, who's very, you know, is really forthright in his opinion, as you could imagine Ferguson would be. But then you've also got the president of Real Madrid, and you've got all these big players who I didn't know they were called the Galacticos. Is that what they're called? Yeah. So, you know, you're Roberto Carlos, you know, you're Ronaldo. See how I didn't know these people. Zinedine Zidane.
Sorry, what was that name?
Is it Zinedine Zidane?
Zinedine Zidane.
Okay. Well, look,
I've not got a lot to add to this.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah. I wouldn't know who these people. I feel I know these people, and I think a lot of that boils down to the direction and the intimate nature of and the many hours that have been put into this documentary, and that absolutely boils down to the director, who is Fisher Stevens, who most people I think now will know as, if you watch a lot of television, you'll know him as the communications guy from Succession. Doesn't he at one point, doesn't he do something about like woof woof or something like you're my dog? And there's a particular line that he gets. Hugo, yeah. He's called Hugo in Succession. But anyway, if you know Fisher Stevens, you know he's been in a lot of stuff throughout the 80s.
Some of which
90s.
He's had to apologise for.
Some of which in today's terms doesn't look particularly good. But I think he seems to be a real gentleman of Hollywood. People seem to really like him. And he is now a brilliant documentarian. And he does the Oscars for the documentary category. He's part of the team that sort of like awards the Oscars for that category. And he is brilliant. He's brilliant in this. He sometimes appears on screen. He's speaking Spanish to people. You can see the rapport that he's built with the Beckhams and also with everyone else around them. And whilst my only criticism is I would have liked to have heard more about Qatar. I would have liked to have heard more about, you know, we've all heard this rumour of, you know, a sweary email because Beckham didn't get a knighthood. I would have liked to have understood more about that. He doesn't push massively on the affair, but, you know, maybe that's not what we should all really be bothered about. Maybe we should really be focusing on what happens when a young lad who is incredibly talented, who's had a lot of pressure, and there's really, you know, it really digs into the amount of pressure he had, particularly from his father, who has all this pressure, who's ultra focused, who's made to be ultra focused, then gets fame at a young age, marries a Spice Girl, and then goes all around the world, sometimes by himself. I think it's just a fascinating portrait of what happens when you are uber famous. And that's why I've spoken to you a lot about it, because that is the bit that I've really taken away. Yes, there are the other things that are of interest because they're a bit salacious, but actually it's the portrait of what happens when you take a young lad and you tell him he's really talented, but you also make him work really hard. And that becomes his entire life. At one point in the documentary, he says, you know, football, you know, I love football. Football is my life. I love my family too, but football is everything to me. And you just think, you know.
So I think I'm the one person on earth who hasn't seen this documentary, and I probably will watch it before the end of the year just for top 10 lists and stuff like that. I feel I know the story. I certainly know it because you've told me a lot about it. When you say it was like a thriller,
Yeah.
what bits didn't you know? Because I feel I know quite a lot about David Beckham, both through following football and also the fact him and Victoria clearly have at times courted publicity and used that to their advantage. I'm not saying that excuses the role of the press in certainly when he was very young guy. But yeah, what parts?
I think it's really difficult to, when you say that you know so much about it, for me to then second guess. But I think the thriller elements for me were, I didn't know when certain things were going to end. I didn't know if he was going to stay with a club or leave a club. I didn't know how that leaving, because obviously he did leave a number of clubs, how that manifested itself. And so all of that came as a real shock to me, actually. Sometimes the brutality of it came as a real shock to me, and I didn't know where he was going to go. So when he's saying, oh, I'm going to America, and then the next minute he's going somewhere else, that just, it's, when they're talking about being friends with Tom Cruise, and and you're seeing video footage, and so you're led down one path and then suddenly he's off somewhere else. Those things were a real shock to me. But also sort of the I suppose the marriage behind it. You presume that you would perhaps talk to your partner about these big decisions, and it really struck me that in the footballing world, one day you're living in one country, the next day you're living in another, and there hasn't been a discussion. That's the behind the scenesness of it I found really interesting.
Does Dan Bowers get interviewed at any point about Out of Your Mind?
No, he doesn't. I mean, what's really sad actually is that it is Beckham, as in David Beckham. I would really like to see, and I think Victoria Beckham comes across incredibly well in this, and I think I felt a great deal of sympathy and empathy for her, actually. As much as you can have for someone who's clearly got a very, very comfortable lifestyle and, beautiful houses and seemingly the world at the fingertips, I still felt that there were, as a woman and as a mother, there were things that would have tested me a great deal. Yeah. But yeah, so Beckham, I think, is an absolute must-watch. I think it is one of those sort of like top 10 of the year. I think it will be somewhere around my top 10. But the next documentary that I watched, obviously similar, is the Coleen Rooney, Wagatha Christie documentary, where Coleen Rooney accused someone from Rebecca Vardy's account, Rebecca Vardy being another footballer's wife, or I think she was married to Jamie Vardy, wasn't she, and still is, of leaking information from her private Instagram account.
Do you remember where we were when that...
No, I don't.
We were here.
Right.
I remember saying to you, oh my God, you will not believe what Coleen Rooney's just tweeted. So I read it out to you and I was like, and you were like, it's Rebecca
Vardy's account. Yeah. And then there was a great big court case, which like in sort of the circles that I move in, very of great interest in terms of who is taking whom to court, how is it all manifested, is it going to settle, is it not, and also who would win at the end of the day. So I took a great deal of interest. I remember reading a lot of the transcripts during the day as well. What I think is really interesting about this documentary is, and why everyone was so shocked, is Coleen Rooney does not court press attention. And not in that, and this is not me judging Rebecca Vardy, but Rebecca Vardy very much was someone who had a relationship with the press. So she had a column, for example. She was doing front page covers of magazines, and particularly with The Sun. She had a big relationship with The Sun. Coleen Rooney, whilst young, in her younger days, has done sort of like hello photo shoots and those are things, isn't someone who does The One Show or have a column in the Mirror, or do you know what I mean? She's very much, she's never really had a voice. She has concentrated on being a wife and mother to her 4 boys. She has got her hands full, that woman.
I suspect the difference is that Coleen has had this since she was 16.
Absolutely.
Whereas Rebecca Vardy, she was in her mid-30s when Jamie Vardy came to prominence, and I suspect it's still very new to her.
Yes.
Whereas, Coleen probably didn't have the best relationship with the press, being a 16-year-old
Totally.
who was on the front pages.
Yeah, I mean, and the documentary goes into this, she's packed going to school. She has to leave school because paparazzi are following her to school. In a school, there's something really horrible when you see the photos as well.
You would
when
hope
she's
that
talking
wouldn't happen
about
now,
it.
and I know that's...
Yeah, I know. And
I know it's
you
20
would
years
hope
ago,
that.
but yeah.
But, they were hiding behind, they were lifting bonnets up and hiding behind it. And how terrifying that must be for a 16-year-old lass in the middle of Liverpool just going to school. And she was very bright, and she was going to do her A-levels, and she ended up not doing that. And again, there's levels, isn't there, to all of these things. She lives a very comfortable lifestyle. She's got her lovely boys. She's got a beautiful house, and they're renovating the house, and all these things. The house is absolutely stunning. I really want to show you the house because it's got this gorgeous drive, and it's just really tastefully done. And you do that thing of looking in people's houses, and you go, yeah, you know what? If I had a lot of money, I'd do my house out like this as well. But what I loved about it, and it's not on the Beckham side of things, it's not as glossy, it is very much Disney Plus, and there's no sort of, there's no sheen to it. It is very much a standard documentary.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it was you got to know more about her and who she is and who her family are, and I really like her. I came away just feeling like, what a lovely woman, and particularly a lovely family who, clearly a family of faith, clearly a family who have really helped people, have been a foster family, and also, and this sort of goes to our own circumstances and it's very emotive for us, but they also adopted a little girl with profound and multiple learning disabilities who also had life-limiting illnesses and died 10 years ago, still very young. And you can see the impact that has had on her family and also on her as a person. And she talks about how she keeps things to herself. She didn't tell anyone about what she was going to do when she set a trap for whoever was leaking her information to the press. And a lot of that, I think, comes psychologically from the fact that she was a sibling of a profoundly disabled child, and the pressure that puts on you to be okay when things are not okay, and also the grief that she must feel, the desperate grief that she must feel because her sister has died. And I just came away thinking, oh, good for you, good for you. You've got your hands full. There's a bit in the documentary where she's like, you know what, everyone thinks I'm off doing champagne lunches, but I'm just in the car. And it was like, we're totally different worlds, but I felt such a resonance with her of like, yeah, I know that feeling. I've only got one kid, but I'm well in the car every 5 seconds, going to the shop, coming back. She says, oh, I'll go and get a coffee, and then I have to, and there's this other bit where she's getting all their bags ready for school, and I'm like, again, I've only got one kid, I've not got 4, and I'm doing that, every night, going, right, where's the things, have we got the swimming bag, and all of hers are like lined up. And yeah, I just really enjoyed getting to know more about her, and she was on Woman's Hour, she was on The One Show, and I really hope that now our kids are getting a little bit older, she has these opportunities to do more for herself. And I think she's a really interesting voice, particularly having been in the public eye for such a long amount of time. And I think she carries herself with real dignity.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I really like that, and so it felt nice to watch that. Okay, final documentary. Are you ready?
We're doing these quickly, apparently.
Yeah, I know. Final documentary is absolutely for you. You will love this documentary, okay? It hits so many different things for you, and I wish I'd watched it with you, but I'm glad I've seen it because I don't think we would have found it, because it was hidden away. It's a documentary on Amazon Prime, and it's called The Greatest Show Never Made. Have you heard of it?
It rings a bell. Something rings a bell. Tell me about it.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it very, very brief in terms of the premise because I
Yeah.
want you to watch this. It's 2002. Big Brother is at its absolute height. We've got Jade Goody is in the Big Brother house. Reality TV has completely taken off. Heat magazine's probably going mad. You and I are both in our early 20s and we are probably living with groups of people, yeah? You think you're
I was probably back home at that point.
But you've had that experience
I've
of
been to
living
uni.
with other people.
I would have moved out the year after.
Yeah. So, but it's of that time, isn't it? Where
Yes.
you're meeting people, you're forming who you are as an adult, and like I say, reality TV has blown up at this point, and everyone who's a normal person on the street wants to be famous, and adverts. Put out, flyers are given out on the Millennium Bridge, it's in the back of the stage, contestants wanted for new reality TV show, must be energetic, must be colourful, and £100,000. Auditions are held, they have to travel down to London, and it's a small group of people, but, and then some people auditioning them, and then some people are told, you're not successful, but then they're told, actually someone's pulled out, so you're in. So these 30 people then give up their jobs, their flats, so their tenancies. Some of them even say, I think my relationship's going to come to an end at this point because I'm going to go and be part of this reality TV show. And they all descend into one of the parks in London and meet each other for the first time. And there's one cameraman there, and the cameraman has also applied as part of this process and is expecting, other people, thinks it's going to be a good experience to be part of the camera team. And it transpires that the producer, who is a 25-year-old called Nikita Russian, perhaps doesn't have the Channel 4 commission that he has led people to believe is taking place. And there is no champagne, there is no Davina McCall, they are just in a park, it's raining very heavily, they have nowhere to live, they have no food, they have no money. And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
This documentary takes a look back at how that happened, who those people were, and also then there's a bit of a mystery, isn't there, about who this Nikita Russian is, who he was at the time, and what's he doing now. If I tell you Nikita Russian is not his name.
Funny that.
Yeah. And when you find out what his name is, it's quite funny. On the surface, I thought this was going to be really throwaway. I thought this was just going to be a bit of a laugh of, isn't it funny how at that time we were just so, desperate to be famous that people would give up their jobs. I mean, some people were like working in the city as well. But they were convinced they were going to be the next big thing. They were, but like I said, Big Brother was on at the time, and win money. They were going to win money. They were going to be famous. Some of them wanted to be presenters, some of them wanted to be actors, they wanted to get into that industry, but also they wanted what they saw other people getting.
Yeah.
And you think it's going to be funny, and you think it's going to be quite light, but there's only 3 episodes, but as it goes on, it's probably one of the most moving things that I've seen for a while. And it speaks to, without giving too much away, it speaks to that time in our lives. So if you are in your 40s, that time in your life in the early 2000s where you probably were sharing a house with people, whether that was a big house, like I shared houses with like 6 other blokes, I shared houses with lots of, a couple of people. Weird things happened in those houses. We were funny people all chucked together. There were romances, there were fallouts, And I remember at that time, we had pictures of we'd gone to get the paper, And we cut out the photographs of all the Big Brother contestants and we stuck them up against the mantelpiece. This is when I was living, with these people. And then we religiously watched that programme, and when they left, we pulled their picture off, and we were so invested in it. And I remember, sitting, one of my friends in the house, we went and bought Heat magazine every week, and we read it from cover to cover together. It was like a bonding thing for us. And you think sometimes, like, where are those people now? Like, some people you keep in touch with, some people you don't. What happened to them? And so it becomes so emotive, I think, for you personally watching it if you are of that age. But also, I think, just generally to see what happened at the time. Because obviously there's loads of footage because they were filming. So you can see them in that, you see it dawn on them. You can see the sort of like what is going on.
I want to know as little about this as possible.
So, and it reveals itself to you in the most amazing way. I thought it was fantastic.
I'm interested because I feel you have an investment in this that doesn't sound like it's in the show. Just as nostalgia from the time.
Yeah. It was part that, but part it's a human. There's a human element to this.
I don't. So my worry about this is I don't understand what happens beyond episode 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is a problem with a lot of documentaries now. So,
but like I say, it reveals itself to you.
Could I watch it and then we'll do another podcast on it?
Yeah.
Okay. I also, this is going to make this awkward. So you'll be watching Bodies.
So Bodies, which is also on Netflix, and is not a documentary.
I had zero interest in this because I assumed this was a medical drama.
Well, there was a medical drama called Bodies.
This might be where, yeah. I now have heard a little bit about it and now really want to watch this.
Yeah. Do you want me to do a very, very brief thing, not giving anything away?
I mean, I'm not sure you can do everything. I think you'll be giving
I won't
third act revelations out by the end of it. But yeah.
So I'll talk about sort of how I came to it. I heard other people talking about this, and because it had Stephen Graham in, it had lots of other people who was sort of like an ensemble cast. But then somebody said like sort of the premise of it, and I was like, oh, they said it was mind bending, and I just thought, I don't think I'm in the mood for mind bending. But I thought I'll watch one episode of it and I'll see how it goes. I watched it in 2 days. I think it is one of the most phenomenally plotted shows I've watched in some time. Without telling you anything about the show, I have sat and thought about how it works, and it does work. Sometimes when I'm going to use the term mind-bending, I'm not going to use any other adjectives with it. When there are mind-bending shows, there comes a point in the show where you go, you've lost me. I was enjoying it, and now it's gone. Or,
yes.
Oh, you've gone down a path that I cannot follow. I was waiting for that to happen throughout the whole of this show, and it never did.
So for me, that sounds like, I think one of my favourite films of the past 20 years, Inception, never reached that point, and it pulled off the landing, and everything worked.
Now, you may completely disagree. And I think there are some people out there who have said, yes, it's not for me, it's just too much, or and there are, as with all things, when you get to the end or a reveal, you can either go with it or you can't. And I can find things, if I sat here, I could find things and go, oh, well, that was a bit convenient, or that, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Again, right at the beginning of this, I thought, I don't care about this, I don't care about that, I don't like that character, and I don't understand why we keep going back over here. By the end, I was crying about events and about people who at the beginning I didn't appreciate, or I just thought, oh, I wish that plotline wasn't in. Again, there was a real emotional response.
Okay.
I would really recommend everyone watch it.
That is my plan. That's the next thing I'm going to watch. Not on the treadmill, because I don't want to run that long. I imagine they're hour-long episodes.
I think they are quite like, I think they
I'm
are
not
quite
gonna do
long.
that.
Yeah, don't be doing that.
Stick to me half-an-hour comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, sorry, I know I've taken over the whole of television this week, but
I'm going to quickly run over.
Yeah, but yeah, I think there's some really good stuff on TV at the moment and across all genres, and I think it's really nice when you come on the pod and you're like, you know what, I've got loads to talk about because it's so good, because the entertainment industry is working really well, and the acting is brilliant and the production's brilliant, and it just, yeah, it's quite uplifting. I found it quite uplifting to watch so many talented people and productions, and for that to be there, I felt very thankful that these things are around, particularly when you need them. You know, I think it's good. Television can really help.
Shall I talk about some films?
Saturday night at the movies. Who cares what picture you see? When you're hugging with your baby, last row in the balcony.
So, 2 films I've seen, BlackBerry and Totally Killer. And then we've both seen The Creator, which I feel has passed by, but let's touch base, because we've not really swapped stories about that.
No.
In the month since it's come out. Touch on BlackBerry first. BlackBerry is the story of Research in Motion, which is the company that had the BlackBerry phone. Did you ever have a BlackBerry phone?
No, it was a bit too high tech for me. I had a little Nokia.
See, I had a work BlackBerry.
Lots of people did, didn't they? That was sort of the big thing, that if you were senior, and I remember at the time there were senior people within the industry I worked in that were given BlackBerries.
I mean, I wasn't very senior, but I just wanted to get hold of me. The reason I liked my BlackBerry was there was a separation. So when I didn't care about work, I could switch it off and leave it at home and put it in a drawer for the weekend. Whereas now, I think I'm very careful with and I work in an industry where people don't necessarily email on a weekend or text on a weekend or whatever, but I know a lot of people are getting stuff all throughout the night and feel obliged to sort of check it.
And WhatsApps as well. It seems work seems to have sort of found its way into WhatsApp groups and things.
You see, I don't WhatsApp people who I work for or work for me and stuff like that, because I think the invasive thing is the fact that you can see when people are online and see when people have read it. If I need to get hold of someone, and we now use Teams, but in the past I would drop a text just because, it doesn't matter to me. Read it, don't read it, whatever. I try not to text people from work anyway, because I tend to leave it. But anyway, I loved my BlackBerry. I was sad when it went because it was replaced with a really shit system in my old job.
What was it replaced with? I can't remember what.
So it was because I worked in the finance sector, it had to be ultra secure emails. So it was a Citrix thing that really drained your battery, wow. You had to jump through a lot of hoops to get them.
And then did everyone just get a mobile phone that could do what the BlackBerry could do?
Well, I had a smartphone before I had a BlackBerry, but I think a lot of Office 365 means that you can just get an app on your phone and just type it in. There was no centrally hosted email platform and stuff like that. So it means it's a lot easier just to add things onto your phone. You don't need any infrastructure internally that would do that. You just buy the email off Microsoft.
And you just get apps on your phone, and that's
that's done. Yeah. So this is a story, and it's kind of one of a trilogy of films for me this year, with Air and Tetris. None of which you've seen, I don't think?
No, I haven't, but I feel like I have.
Okay.
It's a bit like me talking about documentaries. You've really enjoyed those stories and talking to me about those industries. Yeah.
I liked BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Tetris was also out this year. So Air is very nostalgic for the 80s. BlackBerry is very nostalgic for the 90s and 2000s, but less so. I think Air is a film that I love and may very well be in my top 10 for the year, but there is a hell of a lot of... Remember the 80s? Do you remember when we did this in the 80s? I think BlackBerry's more more focused on dealing with the actual development of a phone that changed the world until the iPhone came out, really. It stars Jay Baruchel. Do you know Jay Baruchel?
I feel I do, but maybe I don't say their name in the way that you just have.
I might not be
Jay
fair anyway.
Baruchel?
That could be it. Yeah, that could be it.
I mean, I know the name, but I couldn't tell you what they look like, though.
So he's one of like the frat pack. That's him.
No, I mean,
No.
you're showing me a picture and
he's one of the Seth Rogen's, like Seth Rogen's little crew that was in all those films. Knocked Up. He might not be in Superbad, but he was in This Is the End. He was in. She's Out on My League, I think. Or
I think these are all films that I don't watch.
Yes,
so,
that makes sense. Yeah. That sounds like something that you wouldn't do.
And is he playing sort of like one of the BlackBerry executives?
He plays Mike, one of the founders of BlackBerry, along with Doug, who. Jay is kind of the tech genius. Doug is kind of the.
The money?
No, definitely not the money. Doug is more the. He's shown to be a bit of a clown around the office. He always wears a red headband. He's played by Matt Johnson, who also wrote and directed this film. And they are struggling in business. They have this great idea for how to use an unused part of the mobile phone carrier signal to carry emails. And they come across, as they're pitching for money, they come across Glenn Howerton, who is in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Nope.
Okay, you would probably recognise him.
I probably would.
He plays an awesome sleazy shitbag.
Okay.
And this is kind of what he is in this.
Okay.
He plays a guy called Jim who gets fired from his job in what would now be called a venture capitalism, I guess. And remembers these guys, thinks they've got something about them, and therefore says, oh, look, I'll leave my job and come work for you in exchange for X amount of the company. And it's just how they build. There are some amazing pitch scenes. I'm a big fan of Mad Men and love the pitches that are in there. And there is one of the best pitches I've seen on film, probably since the end of Mad Men, where they are pitching the idea to the guys at, I think, AT&T or one of the major mobile networks. This is just a lot of fun. It shows how it goes from being a bit of a joke company where they're just playing about and having film nights every night and just playing computer games and stuff like that, into being one of the biggest companies in the world. And then how they didn't see the future coming and couldn't understand why anyone wanted an iPhone over a BlackBerry.
Okay.
It's a lot. Yeah, everyone. Jay Baruchel is really good as Mike, as this kind of zen, almost like Steve Jobs equivalent, kind of eccentric. Glenn Howerton is great as the absolute bastard boss who is not taking the slightest but knows how to get shit done. If I had an outside chance, I'd say I had an outside chance as best supporting actor, but
okay,
it's kind of that.
Right.
I think the weak point in this is probably Matt Johnson, because he feels like he's in a different movie, which for a writer-director is an interesting thing. Sometimes just the camera just cuts to him and his face just reminds me of like a Muppet, which
right.
That put that on the poster.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But look, this is a great fun. This is a 4-star film. I enjoyed it. I knew where it was going. I knew a little bit about the business, but I didn't quite realise it was this chaotic.
Okay. It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds like the sort of thing. I don't think I'd go and see it at the cinema, but I'd definitely like stick it on a Friday night, possibly when you're out.
That's a really good film. Yeah. Totally Killer.
Yes, now for something completely different.
Very much so. Do you know much about Totally Killer?
I'd never heard of it until I saw you watching it on the telly, and it looked like a teen slasher sort of film, maybe a Halloween-y type thing.
Okay.
Have I got the wrong end of the stick? Oh, like horror comedy or something like that?
You're pretty much on the nose.
Okay.
This is very much a made-for-TV movie. It's just gone to Amazon Prime. Prime Video, as it's now called. Stars Kiernan Shipka, also of Mad Men, played Sally Draper, the little daughter. Little daughter, God, that's...
I mean, she's not anymore.
That's it, yeah. She grows up in a town where, in 1987, there were a spate of horrific murders around a group of girls from high school. And the town's kind of living on this reputation. There is a podcaster who has a podcast about the town when on Halloween loads of people dress up as with the mask that the killer wore. Same sort of thing that you see on Scream.
Yep.
Kieran Shipka's mum is played by Julie Bowen.
Nope.
Jack's wife in Lost.
Oh, okay. I still can't see her.
Okay.
But I know exactly who you mean, but I can't bring her to mind. But yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Go on.
Then one Halloween, the killer comes back. He performs more murders, and then he's chasing. I nearly gave away a bit of a plot. Yes, performs more murders. Doesn't murder. He's chasing after Kieran Shipka's character. She gets into a time machine that's made by her best friend and is transported back to 1987, which is the year when the murders take place, to investigate what is going on.
Naturally.
I know. I saw your eyes roll when I said
But she gets into a time machine.
I had such a barrier with that part of the film. It felt like a scene out of CBeebies, where, you know, when we occasionally have CBeebies on during the day, and there's kind of something for, like, Blake's gone to school, and we switch it on, and there's like one of them things where I can't remember what it's called, but it's set in Scotland, and
I know exactly what you mean. Mac and Molly or something like that. Yeah, and it's an older brother and a sister, and
the dad, who's
and it's all a bit Balamory, and
there is a scene like that where it's like, oh, I've made a time machine for the science fair, but I just can't get it to work. I've put it in a photo booth. Awful scene. Knock a star off for that. From there, it becomes a really fun romp. You get Kieran Shipka going back to the 80s and having to deal with the very different culture, the very different sexual politics that were going around in the 80s. There's some brilliant observational humour about how lax things are in the 80s. Like, she runs into school and goes, I need to know exactly what class this student is in now. I know you're going to have she's in class 7A. It's like, oh, there's no barriers to putting this in anymore. There's no security anymore. You can
and
just,
there's no
just
data
tell.
protection, and right.
She then starts hanging around with a mum who's played by Olivia Holt, who we last saw in Cruel Summer.
Yes,
brilliantly playing her mum as
a younger version.
This is very movie literate, so because it's 1987, she's able to go around saying things like, do you know, have you seen Back to the Future? Like, I'm in that. This is happening to me right now. Yeah. There's not a lot of big name actors because this is a straight to TV movie. There's Lachlan Monroe, who was in... he's a character actor you will 100% recognise. He plays a dad. There is... Oh, God, who else is there? Randall Park, who you'll know from WandaVision and the Ant-Man films.
Yeah. So there's good people in it.
Yeah, there's good people in this. This is a lot of fun if you can put up with it being absolutely shit at points. But yeah, there's far worse times that you can spend. Like, if coming up to Halloween, if you want like a fun slasher with knowing meta references, you know, at one point there's a reference to... It's like that film where it's like maybe there'll be two killers. Like that film where you think it's going to be Drew Barrymore in it, but it's not. And it's like, what's that? Like, oh, it's not even out yet. So yeah, it's that sort of jokes.
Okay.
I think everyone's fine. It's that one thing of and her friends built a time machine. Yeah. But yeah, 3.5 stars.
Lovely.
Do you know what's very different from Totally Killer?
What?
The Creator.
Yeah. I really dislike the name. I know that's really weird thing to pick on, but my understanding is that the name that it was produced under and then it was subsequently changed was True Love, which I much prefer. Other people have said, oh no, True Love's a terrible
I think that's a fucking awful title.
But I really like it, but mainly because Charlotte Hatherley of the musician fame, when she left Ash, the band, and she went solo, she did a number of albums that were all really, really different. And then when, sort of like not under her own name, she changed and she did an album under the name of Silvertongue, and did a lot of sort of like Bowie-inspired references and a lot of sci-fi. And then she did soundtracks for films and TV on a very soundtrack level. And one of the later albums under her own name again was called True Love. And it was very ethereal and sci-fi-y. And I thought, actually, when I heard this, The Creator was called True Love, it just seemed to marry up in my mind with the sci-fi-ness of the Charlotte Hatherley album, and also the videos that were put out at the time. So I've got that connection in the back of my head, but I can understand other people who don't have that probably think it's like a romantic comedy.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Gareth Edwards didn't take into account the back catalogue of Charlotte Hatherley.
I didn't. I really had that connection with it, and I thought, I really like that, because this is all about, artificial intelligence. It is very much a sci-fi film. It's set in the future where humans and synthetic humans, AI, are in certain parts of the world battling against each other. There has been an incident where people have very much taken against AI because of that incident, but some parts of the world aren't. Some parts of the world, the East in particular, are embracing AI, and so there is that battle between East and West, which is really interesting. There are big spaceships in the sky, but there are also really grounded cinematography in sort of paddy fields and with water and on the ground. It really feels like you can feel the dust and the mud and the things in the air and the water. So it's this real juxtaposition of real, I keep saying real, but this realism, but also this sci-fi element to it as well, which I found incredibly compelling, and I really loved it. I was trying to think, where do I go from here? But I might as well just jump into it. I really, really liked this film, and I have subsequently listened to a number of podcasts where I then felt like I was the only person in the world that liked the film. There were some people, for example, I think if you want a different opinion, go and listen to our friends at the Movie Robcast, because they very much felt a different way to my little love fest there. Where do you come out in this? Was it for you? Was it not for you? So, I can't quite work out where you're going to go with it.
This is a film I respect more than love. I think this is one of the most beautiful sci-fis I've seen for a long time. Like, for me, everyone talks about how Dune was such a beautiful film cinematographically.
Yeah. Works for me.
I don't know where I ended up on that word, but and I think this looked better, with about a quarter of the budget. Mm-hmm. I think the design of the AI people, such as Alfie, I think it's beautiful. I think it looks so well done. The problem for me is every 20 minutes there was a narrative failure, that it felt like there is so much hand waving in this film of, it doesn't matter, we'll just move on.
There seems to be scenes missing.
Yeah.
There is one character who we are shown to feel a certain way, and then the next time we see them, they apparently have gone completely the other way, and there is no connection between. We don't see them moving, or it's just like sudden. 1 minute it's a bit like 1 minute they're really left wing, and the next minute you see them really right wing, and you can't. There's no connection between. That's not what happens, but that's my only thing I can think of. There's no connection between how that happened, or no lines. So it feels like there's something missing, and I agree. There are plot holes galore,
and I don't normally spot those, but there's a scene where they are trying to get into a city, and Alfie and Joshua are hiding in a car. Joshua can hide underneath the car or something like that, out of view, but Alfie is like, there's a checkpoint and they're like, how many children have you got with you, blah blah blah. And there's a lot of tension in that scene because people doing counts of how many kids, like, you've got this extra kid, where's this kid come from? And then they get out of it through plot contrivance. Literally the next scene, you see them in the city getting on a bus, and it's like, hang on, like,
yeah, is there not an issue? Yeah.
John David Washington is a black man in East Asia, and there is not shown to be not a lot of black men there, but yet his face is there. How is he not standing out like a sore thumb around
When
the
they're
city where
specifically looking for him? Yeah.
All it needed was just like a scene where they can show how you've got something who can control electronics, so it's not hard to see how you can make these boards stop showing pictures of John David Washington on them.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that was the only thing that held me back. I felt it, for me, I felt it was a 4-star film.
Yeah.
I think it could have been a 5-star film if those things had been ironed out. And it's one of those films where it only needed just a little more work. You just, if only, like you say, there was just a little more detail there, as well as the detail in the way that it looks and feels.
This feels like a 4-hour film that's cut down to 2.25 hours, and maybe it's a 4-hour miniseries. The cast do a great job. I mean, Gemma Chan is underserved.
She's always underserved.
Yeah.
I feel for Gemma Chan because I think she's got so much more to give, and yet she seems to be these sort of, she pops up and is a love interest, and then pops up and is a love interest, and I thought, oh great, she's going to get more to do here, and it just didn't transpire. Like you say, John David Washington is solid. I know you've seen him in BlacKkKlansman and clearly playing a different genre there, but I think he could have walked out of Tenet and gone straight into this. I didn't really see a difference there. I would like to see more, but maybe that's only because the only things I've ever seen him in are sci-fi, and that's probably that's my bad.
That's good for you, because that means you didn't see Amsterdam, which
no, it's true. But yeah, I would like to see him in something different as well, and that's my own fault for not watching him other things. The child that plays the child, Alfie, is absolutely stunning. Really reminded me of your likes of your Haley Joel Osments and other young actors who
put it up there.
Who emote so well, but not in an over the top way. Very, very true to life. Good dialogue as well. I felt that building the relationship between people. I really loved the emotion, without going into any plot spoilers, the emotion there, the emotional lines, the idea of, what is love and what is, what is real and what is not real. I really enjoyed that. And there were certain things that happened in the film that really resonated with me, and experiences that I have had and you have had that probably gave it a bit of an extra boost for me, because I could relate to those things, and I put myself in the position of the people, and what would I do if this particular thing had happened. So yeah, I really loved it on that basis. I tell you what I also loved, which I think it's had a bit of flack for, but I really loved what I feel are really, really purposeful references to other films. There was a reference to Aliens that I clapped my hands together. There was hardly anyone in my cinema. I clapped my hands together and rolled my head back because I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm trying to be, James Cameron. It was a proper nod, and the huge nods to Apocalypse Now and other Vietnam films. I really like that idea of going back to Vietnam, because people don't do that anymore. It's almost like you had a lot of those films that talked about it, and then we've moved on to other things, but also real references to 9/11, to the war in Iraq, bringing it up to date. There was a lot for me to think about. I really liked Alison Janney in a role that not against type, because Alison Janney has been in roles where she needs to be hard and hard-faced and quite tough. But seeing her in a military role here, I thought she did a brilliant job, and actually she didn't have much to do, but I got everything from what I needed. You know, I got everything from the lines that she gave and the way that she performed it.
What about General Finchy?
I know, Ralph Innocent. You know what? For the longest time, when that character came on the screen, I thought it was Clancy Brown.
Well, it's very made up, and it doesn't. Yeah, and I was like, "Is that Finchy?
Yeah.
Is he going to get him to throw something over a pub?"
But then really, with the link, it then really reminded me of Starship Troopers. You know, there was a Starship Troopers element to it. And like I say, I think it's had criticism for people throwing Blade Runner at it and other things. And I think though there's a fine line, isn't there, between nods and, you're just ripping off those things. And I think this is a filmmaker who loves those films. And if I was making a sci-fi with AI and, you know, these contexts in them, too right, I'd be pulling from all of my experiences as a teenager and as an adult. Of course, I've consumed all this stuff for years. Those are going to be my references. So yeah, it was 4 stars for me. I'm glad you didn't absolutely hate it, because I have heard people who've really taken it apart, and I don't think it deserves it. I think we should be. I mean, this is a film where, you know, it's not a franchise. It's not a Marvel or a DC.
It's lovely to see just original piece of film, yeah. Yeah,
with beautiful cinematography and not a gigantic budget, you know, not a stupid
but getting the most budget, out of the budget.
You know, but looking like it is.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed it, and I thought, oh, good for them. You know, like, and I know it hasn't done particularly brilliantly in the box office, which I think is a real shame.
Well, hopefully it can make some money on the
Yeah, and when it
video.
does all the video
DVD.
Blockbuster.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I'm going to come back after watching a couple of TV shows, apparently, and we can have a more in-depth discussion. But, thank you for listening. If you would like to follow us, we are on Twitter at the minute and Instagram at the Honeymoon Pod,
and we're also on Letterboxd.
Oh, well done. I am anyway. You're not.
I know. But I thought I'd mention that. What are we on Letterboxd? Is it?
It's at the Honeymoon
Pod.
At
the Honeymoon Pod, right?
Yeah. Where you can find out what I think, see what I think about films before a podcast comes out. If you'd like to leave us a review, you can do so on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I believe it's now called.
Or star rating on Spotify. That would be fun.
Yeah, excellent. And we'll see you next time.